Hey, welcome to another video. This is the Keyboard Magazine, issue September 1987, jam-packed with the nice articles, pictures and ads and stuff. So let's go through this one today. What was in it? It's been a while since I did one of these What Was In It Keyboard Magazine videos. But today is that day, and this is the issue of September 1987 with Michael Omartian on the front cover here. And this is a very spec'd issue. Lots of tricks, lots of tips, lots of good ads, articles, pictures, whatever. So I can't wait to go through this with you. So let's open it up and see what we've got. And if you've seen one of my videos before from the 80s with Keyboard Magazine, you know what brand always had those first couple of pages after you turn this front over. And that is, of course, Korg. And September 1987, well, they had their DS8 out, of course. A FM synth. Not very good, but that's in hindsight. The Korg DDD5 drum machine. So let's see what else. Letters to the editor, of course. You can try calling that number now and see how fast service you get. Keytech, that page here was always in Keyboard Magazine in the 80s, at least in the middle to late 80s. But regardless, I never saw anyone use this. Never saw it myself, never tried it. Can't think of anyone that had one. If you had one, please let us know in the comments. And Paul Whiffen, he did a nice clinic on the Prophet 2000 sampler. I have an issue of Keyboard Magazine where I go through that and also his clinic in detail. And he had a nice editorial here where he is talking about user friendliness on samplers at the time. And if user friendliness is more important than the sound quality, the Akai S900 had come out at the time. And well, what do you guys think? Was or is user friendliness more important than the sound itself in a piece of gear? I won't argue with either side, but let us know in the comments if you have something to say about that. And of course, 1987 was the year of the release of the Roland D50, and I like the way they're introducing the D50 here. It doesn't say it's Roland, it doesn't say it's a D50. It only says that this is a new technology coming onto the world of synthesis here. And remember, this is pre-internet by many years. So back then, this was probably the first time you'd ever hear of a Roland D50 if you picked up this magazine back then. And here it is. To the player, it's a dream. To the programmer, it's a miracle. So they had a couple of pages here and also introducing the PG-1000 programmer. This is a page I always looked out for in Keyboard Magazine at the time. Unfortunately, I rarely had the gear that someone was tipping us about, but occasionally I did, and this was readers just throwing out tips that might be useful for other users of the gear at the time. How to sequence program changes for the Yamaha FB01, which you couldn't do with the regular MIDI program changes. You had to use SysX. So there you have the SysX parameters you had to input into a sequencer to get it to change the programs on the FB01 for maybe for a live situation or whatever. Remember, this is old hardware gear and not a DAW. Efficient use of the Roland drum machine memory, microtonal compositions from multi-timbral instruments, and more power from the Casio CZ series. The Alesis Microverb, of course. I had it. Loved it at the time because I didn't have anything else. Kawai K5 additive synthesis. I don't think this ever really took off in the synth world, but it has its loyal fan base even to this day, and not many people know how to use it. You can get some really cool sounds out of it. Reviews of books and records at the time. And of course the Casio FZ1 sampling synthesizer. You could do a lot of stuff in this as well. I have a couple of videos, or had a couple of videos of the rack module version of this. It has a definite sound of its own. And here is one of my absolute heroes, Danny Elfman. And this is when he was part of Oingo Boingo, which might not be as well known in Europe and Scandinavia, where I'm from, but Oingo Boingo was really big and popular in the mid-80s in the United States for any of my European watchers here. And Danny Elfman, of course, rose to fame later as one of the greatest film composers. Done lots of movies with Tim Burton. Batman comes to mind, of course. But this is prior to all that. He had only done a couple of movies, scores at that time of this article, Pee-wee's Big Adventure and Beetlejuice. So in this issue, he's mainly talking about, or mostly talking about, his work with Oingo Boingo. And if you haven't seen the movie Weird Science, a John Hughes film from the mid-80s, you should definitely go check that out, where the title track Weird Science is also part of that movie. Weird Science is a song from Oingo Boingo. And at this time, he was really into tech. You can see some of his stuff here. Prophet VS keyboard and rack units, the Prophet 2000 I see here, some Mac sequencing software, I assume, or sample editing. And this is a very nice article. And I love Danny Elfman and how his mind works. And I will tie this article here into something, another article later, where a reader wrote to Keyboard Magazine accusing Danny Elfman of not knowing what he's doing as a film composer. And that started a debate between that reader and Danny Elfman in person. And it's highly interesting, and I'll come back to that in a later video. But he's using a lot of Yamaha gear here, and he's talking about sequencing with the Yamaha QX1 and lots of DX7s, etc., etc. And he's also saying that my experience, personal experience with analog synths has been entirely negative. Dan Elfman has strong opinions about stuff he had even back then, and highly interesting to read. Tascam, BBE. Proverb from Art. I remember this, or I think I remember this in some of the music stores I visited back in the days. Can't really remember if I ever used one or heard one in use. Keyboard Magazine at the time had these clinics where they went in depth detail on a certain synth or some piece of gear, software, whatever. This time it's the DX7 II, and stuff you could do with that. That's not necessarily very clear from reading the manual or whatever, and it really took articles like this, clinics like this, to really harness the power of a lot of gear. So I was always thankful for people who did the legwork and made it possible for others to learn from it. Again, pre-internet, so this was all we had in terms of getting this info to us. And as always, I can do scans of these keyboard magazines or articles, not for free. I have had some people cursing at me for not doing this for free, but it actually takes a while to scan articles like this on a bed scanner, and I simply can't do it for free. But if you're interested, please let me know and we'll work something out. The Apex column stand, keyboard stand, I have one of these, and I mainly use it live, but I love the way they the column slopes, and it's so 80s. If you've seen one of these videos before from the 80s, me going through keyboard magazines from the 80s, you will start to recognize many of these pages, those ads. They are pretty much the same throughout years of appearing in keyboard magazine. My absolute favorite MIDI verb, the MIDI verb 2. It certainly has a special sound, which I really like, which I haven't been able to replicate in software. And this is, of course, a guy you remember now these days. He's just a lot younger here on this picture. This is, of course, Anthony Marinelli. He has his own synth YouTube channel now, very popular. And in this issue, he's actually contributing with his partner here, Brian Banks, with the Soundpage exclusive. And the Soundpage exclusive was a vinyl single specially made for keyboard magazine at the time, and you could rip this out and play it on your turntable. And this is very interesting to listen to and to read, especially in light of his recent YouTube channel experiences. So again, highly recommendable. And I might or might not, when you're watching this video, check the video description if I have a link to this actual recording in there. I might or might not have it, but I have it. All of these sound pages, I have them digitized. I have them on my hard drive, but I'm not sure I'll be able to link to it directly. So again, check the video description, and it might or might not be there, a link to that song. Again, a really nice jam-packed issue of Keyboard Magazine, this, with almost interesting stuff on every page. And of course, those ads, the Emacs. And here we have it. And they, of course, talk about this recording, Leapfrog, in this issue. The hardware and the thought process behind the song. Passport software. The mighty DMP7 digital mixer from 1987. Really like that one. Very expensive at the time, not so expensive now, and it certainly has its own sound. The typical slightly gritty, if you want to use that word, but back then it was hi-fi, and it still is. It's just that we've come to expect more from sonic fidelity these days, I guess. And I'm sorry to say, I don't know or didn't know this guy, Adam Makowitz, back in the day. But Keyboard Magazine always had articles with jazz-related topics. They started out like that, and over time they faded that out, sort of. But there was always something to pick up in terms of tips and tricks if you were into to learning about music theory and notes and chords and harmonies and structure and progression. So even though I didn't always know the people they were talking about when it came to more jazzy fusion stuff, I always picked up something from reading the articles, because I read everything, absolutely every word of each issue, and I always learned something from it. Home studios and income tax, of course. Digitech. Bo Tomlin did a lot of presets back in the day. He showed his face on pretty much in every issue in the 80s. And here's another great article, interview with Michael Omartian, and Rick Beato recently, or almost recently, did a nice video with him as a guest, where they were more about pianos, harmonies, music, the more theoretical stuff, or at least not gear focused. This article here is a combination of both gear and music, and I really liked this issue back in the day because he was one of my heroes as a producer in that day. And one of my all-time favorite tracks, Glory of Love with Peter Cetera, comes to mind, which he produced and played piano on. David Foster never played a single tone on Glory of Love. He co-wrote Glory of Love with Peter Cetera, but it was Michael Omartian who produced it and played the piano parts on that. Cetera sang and played the bass, the synth bass. Dan Huff, of course, on guitars, those iconic guitar parts, and I think Jeff Porcaro did the percussion, and the drums were played by can't remember who played the drums on Glory of Love. Those were not programmed; they were played live, but I can't remember the name of the drum player at the time. Yeah, let's move on. Maybe it's Haim who played drums there. So he has a KX88 here, of course, the Yamaha NS10s. What else? Let's see in the background here. I have some lights shining directly in my face, so it's hard to actually see the page here. Akai S900. Is that some Korg effects maybe? Macintosh here. That's the Yamaha TX816 rack, of course. See a little bit of a Minimoog here. Maybe we'll see more on the next. Yeah, it says right down here. Yeah, it's a Yamaha Rev 7 effects unit, of course. The S900, yes, TX816, Minimoog, yeah, NS10, and some Roland stuff, yes. Very accomplished piano player and great personality. Did a lot of stuff in the 80s, a lot of stuff. So let's see what we can pick up here. Talking about records and songs. And yeah, he's talking about bands like U2 who forsake all the synthesizer trappings. I know this is Keyboard magazine, but it's nice to hear some guitars too. And of course, in the 80s, mid-80s US pop, there has to be some guitars along with the synthesizers, unless you're doing strict synth pop, which he didn't do. The Akai X7000 sampler, of course, my first sampler. It still looks so nice. So what keyboards is Michael Omartian using at the time of this issue, conversation, a album? Lots of DX. DX1 was a mother keyboard, DX816, DX7, a couple of Oberheim Matrix 6s and a Matrix 12, the Emulator 2, and a Roland digital piano, maybe the MKS-20. It's my guess. He samples with the Emulator 2 and the Akai S900, yes. He likes the S900 because he thinks the sound is very clean. Today, everyone is talking about the S900 because they think the sound is gritty. I mentioned that earlier, and back in 1987, the S900 was hi-fi. It was very clean. Some producers even sampled vocals and flew in vocals directly from the S900, so it was nothing gritty about it. It's just that we become used to, or we want to experience even higher fidelity today. So this is how things change over decades. Serious repercussions. This is, of course, the SP1200 sampling percussion system. So it was made to sample percussion. It was just that the rap and the rap artists turned it into what we think of it today as a rap sampler used by rap artists, R&B artists. Phil Collins, Chester Thompson. This was back in the day, TC Electronics. Hybrid Arts. All those familiar names. DigiDesign. Now your sampler can play every sound you've never heard. Sample your imagination. For the Atari ST. Again, small private lessons, chord progressions, stuff of that nature. Great stuff here. Learned a lot, like I said. And Sonic. Always had some ads here. The Time Commander. Dr. T. Josh Benson with the synclavier. Some say synclavier, some say synclavier. I don't know if this is something in the US-Europe related. What's the... if someone knows the absolute correct right way to say it, please let me know in the comment section. Is it synclavier? Is it synclavier? It's like Moog, Moog. I always say Moog. I think Moog is the right pronunciation for a Moog synthesizer. Doesn't really matter, really, as long as everyone knows what you're talking about, I guess. DX72 again. Chord stuff. I actually sat down and played each and every chord back in the day just to hear how it would sound. And slowly I learned more about music theory, modes and stuff like that. You certainly don't have to know any music theory to make great music. But back in the day, if you knew this stuff, it certainly wouldn't harm your career or your ability to do things faster and easier. So that's my take on it. I might do a video about that actually. If you have to learn music theory today, I guess it depends on what you want to do. The patches page where people could send in patches for their synths, and this was a great way of getting new ideas or new patches, new presets into your synths. For the gazillionth time, this was before internet. If you didn't know any friends or other guys having your synths, there was no way to get new sounds unless you programmed the synths yourself and made some new patches, which a lot of people did, of course. Sometimes your creativity or inspiration lacked something, and pages like this was a great way of boosting your creativity. You got ideas from the parameter settings. I can do things like this, and that's suddenly made it into 5 or 6 new patches of your own. So this was a great way of making sounds, new sounds. I love these types of articles, smaller articles, one-page tech clinics at the end of each keyboard magazine. Loved it. And at the very end of keyboard magazines, you always had gear reviews with pros and cons. And this is the FZ1. Let's see the conclusions here. This was actually a long review here. Conclusions. Well, it continues on page 155, so we'll get back to that shortly. And the D50, let's see what the conclusions on that one is. And the DDD5. So there's a lot to catch up on here. Here's the conclusion on the D50. Oh, this is a long one. Let's just say that LA synthesis is a success, and we expect that the D50 will be as well, even if some corners were cut to get into such competitive price range. The instrument's capabilities make sense in both recording and performance situations, and it can produce a wide range of sounds. We're expecting some of the factory patches to become as ubiquitous as the blasted DX7 Road sounds. Keep your ears open. So this was when the D50 was brand new, and I don't think they had any idea how iconic the D50 would become. And who can blame them? The conclusions of the Casio FZ1. Don't get us wrong, after comparing the FZ1 with the 12-bit sampler in our home studio, we wish we had waited a few more months before writing that hefty check. So they're definitely like the FZ1 here. Some classifieds at the end here. Always people selling sounds and stuff like that. Let's see if you can find some, yeah, it's mostly sounds presets. And finally, and Oberheim often had this last page here, this is the DeepX1 sample player. If you didn't want to sample yourself but wanted access to some of the sample libraries of the Emulator 2, Prophet 2000, and the Mirage, you could buy this one, which had audio outputs. You could load in those floppies and play those sample libraries through this player. And they're also saying they're adding the Akai S900 sampler later, so I think this is also compatible with the S900 at a later time. And that pretty much sums it up. This is Keyboard Magazine, issue September 1987. I read this a whole lot of times. I've read it now with you, and I'll probably read it in the future as well. Great issue. As always, I'm Espen Kraft. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time. Cheers.